Good morning, everyone. We'll make a start. Welcome to Babergh District Council's Planning Committee. I will now ask the Government Officer to read out the domestic arrangements and the fire regulations. Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptop is also switched to silent. We'll be using the e-voting for this meeting on the Modern Gov app, so please could members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts, and do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning. Acting as the Chief Planning Officer, we have Stephen Stroud, the Area Planning Manager, Mark Russell, our Legal Advisor, Ian Dupre, and at the moment we have present case officers Joe Hobbs and Daniel Cameron. Claire is our Governance Officer. Ward members present are Councillor Arthey and I believe Councillor Mabry, you are here. Okay. Thank you. Can I move on to the agenda? Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Michael Holt and Councillor Ayres is substituting, and apologies from Councillor Peter Beer and Councillor Mabry will be substituting. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, could I please have noted that I will not be sitting on the Planning Committee for the first item, which is for Chilton, but I will then join the Planning Committee for the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Duly noted. To receive declarations of pecuniary interests and other registrable and non-registrable interests by members. I need to declare. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have other registrable interest on DC 20/01094. And I'd like to exercise the right under Suffolk Code of Conduct to speak for 3 minutes and then leave the meeting.
Yes, I think I be heard. Yes, Chairman. I think that's acceptable. If there is, sorry, Councillor, are you going to Osborne? Are you minded to speak as a supporter of the application, or?
I haven't seen the presentation, but I will make my mind up whether I wish to speak or leave the room.
Okay, that's all. Well, that's all right for the time being. I think. Well, I think, Councillor, if you're saying you have another registrable interest, that normally means you ought not to participate other than as a speaker, if there is a speaking.
Yeah, I sit as a public governor on the West Suffolk Hospital.
Right. Well, I think on this item we have, the Governance Officer will correct me if I'm wrong, if I've misunderstood, we have a parish council speaking. As we've heard, we have ward members. We have at least one, possibly two objectors, I believe. So that really, unless that only leaves the possibility of a supporter speaking. Am I right? Yes.
Then, under that, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave the room before the item it comes up. Well, I'll listen to the presentation, then leave the room.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Barrett?
Normally, if that's the situation, the fact that the councillor is in the room is normally debarred by the fact that he's in the room. So if he's he ought to really leave the room before, if he's
Well, yes, I think that, yeah, if I may say so,
but not even listen. But not even listen to it. I think.
To the presentation. Okay.
No, I don't think you should listen to the presentation.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think that's if we're following the rules. Don't you think, Ian?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Any more? Councillor Jameson.
It's just relating to the Bildeston application, DC 2102-405. I just want to let you know that I actually live in Bildeston. I live at the other end of the village, but I just thought I'd better make you aware.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you very much. Any more? No? Okay. Move on. Confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of November. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of these minutes? No? In that case, can I have a proposer to accept them, please? Councillor Jameson. A seconder, please? Councillor Barrett. Thank you. Government officer will now conduct the electronic votes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Maybury, can I take your vote, please?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne, can I take your vote verbally, please? 4, thank you. Sorry, that's 10 votes for and 1 abstention. Thank you. That's
Thank
carried.
you. That's carried. To receive notification petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections. Do we have any requests for site inspections?
Yes, Chair. We have one request. Harry Goodrich will be presenting.
Thank you. Harry, would you like to make a presentation to the committee, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So this site is land north of the street in Shotley under the reference of DC 22-01562. So the site obviously there is outlined in red, with the blue line also showing land under the ownership of the applicant. The green parcel there, obviously the large field in the middle of the screen, that is the site itself. There's a bus stop just off to the south of the site with a pace garage, petrol garage as well. So this is it's a full application for 48 dwellings with 24 affordable units. This is the layout we have currently for the proposal, with a wildflower meadow to the north and public open space in the light green parcel of land towards the south of the site. And these are just some site pictures that were taken when I conducted a site visit myself. And this is obviously on the road looking towards the east, towards the pace garage, west from the junction on the other side of the road, with the site there being on the left-hand side of the screen. The site itself just sort of is an open parcel of land. It's grade 2 agricultural land currently. Jump forward one. Just off to that's looking to the east of the site. Further to the east along the hedgerow, which partially is to be removed. Then off to the west, and the housing off to the west there. And further, the housing. And that's... Thank you, Chair.
Chair, clarification about why the council wanted the site visit.
Yeah, apologies. So Councillor Derek Davis, who is with us today, has requested a site visit for this site due to its nature within the parish and the contentious nature of it.
Thank you, Harry. Any questions? Councillor Barrett.
Could you elaborate on the contentious nature?
Yeah, we've got a number of objections from members of the parish, and I think Councillor Davis might be able to help me here, but I believe we have a number of objections, and generally it's just quite contentious in the village itself.
Is it within policy?
It is not, no.
I just wondered how many houses was it and what was the quantum of affordable housing?
So it's 48 dwellings with 24 affordable, so 50% affordable.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Barrett.
I mean, the purpose of site visit is if the site is tricky to view. But looking at what we saw, it looks to me like it's pretty straightforward in terms of its layout position. And obviously it's a field which is there. So I can't really see that there's much benefit to be gained from a site visit when it's that type of development. If it's a tricky site which you can't access or see, I think, yes, there's merit to having a site visit, but I think with just looking at what we've been seeing, I'm not sure it merits a visit from the planning committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor McCraw.
Is Councillor Davis able to speak on this?
Yes. You can find a spare microphone.
Yeah, thank you, Harry, for those pictures. The main issue for me is I think councillors would benefit from seeing this on the safety aspect. It's on an extremely dangerous bend. There's been a number of accidents there, and I think the access is an issue, and also the speed limit changes from 40 to 30, and I think it would be beneficial to councillors to actually walk the ground so they can see for themselves. The contentious issues, yeah, that will be dealt with in the planning committee, no doubt, but I think certainly the important thing is for you to see the access, to see the road, to see the highways, and judge for yourselves what you think about that, because it is a dangerous part of the road there. I think that would be beneficial. And also, on top of that, and you can see it's quite a large area, but I think you would benefit as well from seeing how the layout would fit into the area. I'm happy to take questions.
Have we had a highways report yet?
We have got highways comments back. I don't have them to hand.
Well, I think that's relevant. Bear in mind Councillor Davis's request, which is based on highways problems, not anything else.
I can certainly get them in. Mark, have we got them available?
Give me the reference against Harry, I'll have a quick look.
I mean, if the highways are suggesting this is dangerous, then it has merit. If they're not, then obviously we need to think about that.
Councillor McCraw.
Isn't that more appropriate to the actual planning application being heard in committee rather than in call for a site visit? I just think it might be premature.
Thank you. Any?
Back up, please. Oh. Okay.
Does that help you,
What's
Councillor?
the difference between the red and the green circle? Are the red trees that are coming out or trees that are going in?
Yeah, the red trees are the ones to be removed along the frontage. I have now got the highways comments to hand, if that would help as well.
Yeah.
So we currently have a holding objection from the Highways Authority due to the cumulative traffic impact, the pedestrian and cycle connectivity, and the site layout. So we have a number of concerns there from the Highways Authority.
What? Bloody highways.
Councillor Busby. You're lit up?
What?
Sorry, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application, a full application or a
It is a full application.
full application?
Yes.
So the layout would be fixed
Yeah.
and the access onto the site would be fixed?
Yeah.
Those are one way or the other? Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that there's obviously merit in having a site inspection, but I'm not quite sure without the facts in front of us and looking at where we are, whether it is necessary to traipse over to Shotley to do that. So I would propose that we probably can get sufficient from the information normally in the presentation from the officer.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Can I have a seconder?
Chair, sorry, can we have clarification about what extra information the case officer can provide, just for next time?
Can I just...
Yeah, sure.
Are you a seconder?
Question, Mr. Chairman. Was that a proposal to have the site inspection or to not have the site inspection?
Proposal not to have the site inspection.
It looks like I'm struggling with the seconder anyway, so I'm not really that worried. If you want to traipse over to Shotley, traipse over to Shotley. I'm happy to say, if you'd like a site inspection, we'll have a site inspection.
Thank you.
There you go. That was a proposal for a site inspection.
Oh, was it? Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor McCraw. Thank you. Electronic vote, is it? The governance officer will now carry out an electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Osborne, for. Thank you. Councillor Maybury.
I'm going to abstain.
Yeah. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 9 votes for, 1 against and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That site visit will happen in January. Thank you very much.
Chair, I do object to the term traipse over to Shotley.
Sorry?
I object to the term traipse over to Shotley. It implies that the journey to Shotley is not a pleasant one.
I can confirm from Sudbury it isn't.
Excuse me, gentlemen, that's not a planning subject to discuss at this stage. Thank you very much. Moving on. Schedule for planning applications. We will start with DC 1094, land to the north side of Churchfield Road, Chilton Industrial Estate, Chilton, Sudbury, Suffolk. Thank you. Can I confirm, Councillor Maybury, you were speaking as a ward member?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry? He has. Councillor Osborne has just left the meeting. We'll record that. I will now invite the case officer, Joe Hobbs, to introduce the application to the committee. Joe, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application being presented to members today is an outline application for 166 dwellings and care home of up to 60 bedrooms in Churchfield Road, land to the north of Churchfield Road, Chilton Industrial Estate. Just showing the location of Chilton there next to Sudbury. So here we have the site location, just to give some context to those who know the area. We have Sudbury Community Health Centre here, Churchfield Industrial Estate, and I'll come on to the wider context. So we have Sudbury, the application site there, Chilton Industrial Estate, and Chilton Woods development, just to share that context there.
So the application site, just to run through some of the planning constraints of the site. It's located there. You can see the built-up area boundary in brown, and so it's located outside of the current development plan boundary. There's also a designation on the site for the site to be employment land under EM02 of the Babergh local plan. That just shows that area there in pink. To go through the other constraints in the site, we have a listed buildings and a registered park and garden around the site. So we have the Grade 1 St Mary's Church down there to the south-east of the site. Grade 2 Star Chilton Hall, the garden walls, which are Grade 2 listed, and historic park and garden, just showing the extent around there. And we'll come on to photos of the other listed buildings, but just to show a photo of Chilton Hall from its north side, just as we don't have photos later in the presentation. Other constraints, just showing the public rights of way around the site, so just showing public rights of way which runs alongside the site here, and then just stepping back a bit, the wider public rights of way networks around the site. I'm just going to run through some photographs of the site now. And the members did do a site visit in March, but not all members were able to attend, but also just to refresh members' memories. So the photo locations are just shown in the bottom corner here. So we're on Churchfield Road, looking toward the health centre. And then we're looking south towards the site where Solar Park was recently granted permission for the employment unit, just to the south of the site there. And just working back round the health centre. And here we are looking across the site towards Chilton Hall in the background there. And looking towards the east. Now these houses are just the other side of the health centre, just showing them on the east side of Waldingfield Road, which is the road that runs alongside this side of the site here. And that's Waldingfield Road, just showing the existing vegetation that's alongside that site there. So looking around the site now, as you can see, we're looking over the site to some of the trees and shrubs and bushes that are on the site. As we work around the site, and then looking towards the church, which you can see across the site to the east there, and some of the employment units just appearing on that side of the slide. So here we are looking down with towards the south of the site, so looking back towards the health centre, which is just behind these trees here. And looking across where there's a tree belt across the north of the site here. We'll get some more photos of those trees in a second. So now we're in a footpath which runs through the site. It's not an official public right-of-way, but as you can see, it's a well-trodden path. And just showing some of the trees that have been planted in that tree belt there. And just showing this looks towards the south of the site, so you can see the light through the trees. Obviously, there's not really leaves on these trees, but you can see that there are glimpses through. The photographs don't always do it justice, unfortunately, on a tiny screen, but as members will recall from site, you do get glimpses through this tree belt here when you are standing on that path. And just showing a few more pictures of the trees, showing the planting. This is looking towards that top corner of Chilton Hall, so you can see the hedge there of Chilton Hall, and trees within the garden of Chilton Hall. And then we're just working our way around the footpath to the east of the site. You'll see there are two footpaths. There is the informal path within the site and the official public right-of-way, just running alongside the site there. So we're now back to Churchfield Road in this bottom corner. Just to point out, this is the location of one of the accesses. I'll show those in a second on the proposals. But here we have the existing employment units and the church, which is just located to that side of the slide. Sorry, my mouse is frozen. And this just shows the site. So our application site is here. One of the accesses is proposed to be here, and the existing employment units there. And now we're on the site in that corner, just looking across. And although the photos don't do it justice, the land does rise. You're on the lower part of the site here, and the land does rise as you move into that centre of the site there. And here we are just looking from the outside of the site towards the church, just to have a slightly better view of the church there. So, onto the proposals. Like I said, the application is outlined. There's an indicative plan and parameter plan submitted with the application, but this just shows the location of the proposals. So, first, the vehicle accesses are shown in red. There's 2 vehicular accesses proposed. And then there's also pedestrian connections to the site, which are shown in dark blue there. Sorry, I jumped over. There we go. The parameter plan, that's the extent of development set by the outline application. This shows the accesses. Proposed care home would be set in that location there. So that was a 60-bed care home. And up to 166 residential dwellings shown in the brown area around here. And there's open space and ecology mitigation areas. I'll show you a slide in a little bit more detail of what they propose in a second. So this shows a little bit more about the ecology mitigation. This was a subject of quite a bit of discussion in the application. There is priority grassland on the site, which is quite important in ecological terms. It's shown in yellow, so it's broadly constrained to the outside areas of the site. The proposals do disturb some of the priority grassland, and so it was agreed with our ecologists that that could be translocated, and that's shown in that brown area there, and that wouldn't lead to any harm to those protected habitats. They could successfully be, in effect, dug up and relocated to that location there. Other ecology mitigation includes area in blue, which would be managed specifically for reptiles, and Great Crested Newt Pond, and then the areas in green are the public open space for the application site. The areas in blue here show the surface water feature on the site, which would be a swale, a surface water lagoon to hold water, and so the site could drain at Greenfield, the existing Greenfield runoff rate. The infiltration was shown to be poor on the site, but with these lagoons, it was considered that the surface water attenuation and disposal would be acceptable. So just going on to the other parameter plans submitted with the application, building height parameter plan has been shown here. The darker brown is proposed to be up to 3 stories, 12.8 metres high, and the lighter brown is up to 2 stories, so 10.1 metres, and that's ridge height, so I'm quoting the heights up there. So the idea is to have the greater height towards this area of the site where there is the 2-storey medical centre. And also a density parameter plan has been submitted to showing the density of up to 40 dwellings, over 40 dwellings per hectare in this location, dark brown, 30 to 40, and then slightly lower density in that location as you're looking towards the relationship with the heritage assets, which I'll come on to in a moment. So that's the last parameter plan, just bringing it all together. And then the applicants have shown that pink cone there, which is the visibility in their view of the church when you're looking at the site, the views that would be retained and obviously not blocked by development. So just to run through, also all other matters have been considered and mitigation identified. That in terms of highways, just pointing out there's mitigation that was secured to the Chilton Woods application, which would provide the highways mitigation required to make this development acceptable in highways terms at these junctions. And so to come to the crux of this application, the key issues, as I've run through all the other issues in the application, ecology, surface water, we found solutions for all those matters. But we have issues, as you'll see from the recommendation, with the principle of the development and heritage. So the application site is outside the development boundary, so we have conflicts with CS2 of the core strategy. And also we have conflicts with employment. It's currently employment land, designated employment land under the core strategy, and so its loss would need to be considered under EM24, and they'd need to meet the tests of that policy. In terms of, important probably to say, the location of this site, it is, in the broad scale of the district, this is a potentially more accessible site on the edge of Sudbury. Sudbury is at the higher end, at the top of our settlement hierarchy, and so there are potential connections, sustainable transport connections to a market town, which is a positive, but notwithstanding its location, there are conflicts with the development plan, which is what we need to base our planning decision on. In terms of the conflicts with employment, there are two tests within the policy EM24 that an applicant would need to meet either of those tests to justify the loss of employment land. One is a sustained marketing strategy to demonstrate that there is no kind of demand and no potential uptake for that site and that use. And the second one is to demonstrate that the use of employment on that site would be inherently unsuitable. As you'll see from the detailed consideration in our report, where we did also seek external advice on that very matter, officers considered that neither of those tests are met. There wasn't a sustained marketing campaign, and we consider that it's not been demonstrated, double negative here, it's not been demonstrated the site is unsuitable, inherently unsuitable for employment, so we have no reason to believe that. One of the other key issues is heritage harm. I'm just going to run through heritage harm quickly on this slide here, so hopefully that will help paint the picture of where we are on heritage harm. So we have a variety of heritage harm as set out under the MPPF, where we have no harm up to substantial harm, and this section here is less than substantial harm. Now, the heritage assets, there's been much detailed consideration by different parties in this application. A number of different bodies have submitted their opinions on heritage harm, obviously as has the applicants, and also we have made assessments ourselves. There's two key areas of heritage harm in officers' opinion that we need to be aware of, and that is the group of buildings that form Chilton Hall and the garden walls. We consider that we're at the upper end of less than substantial harm to the heritage assets, the significance of the heritage assets there. And in terms of the church, we consider it's nearing substantial harm, so we're right near the top end of this less than substantial harm here. And the reason for that is that originally the hall and the church were set in very rural settings, and obviously Sudbury has slowly encroached upon that setting with the development of the employment area, particularly with the church. It's considered that the further development of this site, even with the proposals that were modified during the course of the application, the proposals were pulled back from Chilton Hall. The scheme was reduced from 190 dwellings to 166 dwellings. Even with that reduction, it's still felt that there's an erosion of the setting of the hall, which does harm the significance to a fair degree, really, when we're talking about the upper end of less than substantial harm. It's a matter of, obviously, existing development, looking at the site, the relationship of the land to the heritage assets. It's not necessarily always about whether you can see the heritage assets from the application site. It's the significance directed by the historic setting. And in this instance, we feel that we consider that it's eroding that significance further. So just to add that we don't consider it is substantial harm, but as I say, the church is at the higher end of less than substantial harm. Just to remind everyone where those heritage assets are. So the recommendation is set out in the tabled papers. It has been updated since the committee report was published. That is because we did have a further representation from our own environmental health officer just raising that since the application was previously considered, the standby energy generation facility has been allowed to appeal, and the impact of that facility on air quality in terms of the sensitive receptors in this site would need to be considered. And so at the moment we have insufficient information to kind of advise that air quality would be acceptable, so it has formed an additional reason for refusal, which is shown in bold on the tabled papers. Also, the tabled papers raise more representations from different parties. The officers considered that the report does cover all of the representations made. There is one from the applicants just to consider where a proposal was made to amend the application to be 100% affordable housing. So the proposal is for market housing with 35% affordable housing. That's what has been submitted and consulted upon. But earlier this week, the applicants proposed that the scheme is moved to 100% affordable housing. However, we consider that as a material change to the proposal that would require public consultation and a reconsideration of the planning balance. And so at this time, officers can't advise that members place any weight on that proposal, that amendment, and it's something that would require further detailed consideration to see how that would affect the planning balance. So, the application is recommended for refusal, as shown on the tabled papers, and the reasons for refusal are as set out in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Osborne. Cloris Hinton. Sorry.
He's not here.
I know, I've gathered that.
I thought I was suffering from schizophrenia, not just a cold there. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions, really. If you could put up slide 42, whereabouts is the Nestle pet food plant that's potentially going to cause a bit of a niff?
Yes, that is within the industrial. I don't have the exact location. It's one of the larger units down here within the industrial site. I don't know the exact location. That was considered during the course of the application, the mitigation. If I can provide some more information on that.
And the other question I have is, what on earth is a nitrate vulnerable zone?
Nitrate vulnerable zone, that's an area that where it's identified that groundwater can get into aquifers for drinking water. So it's an area identified by potentially DEFRA to basically identify that if nitrates were to enter the ground there, it's likely they would get into the aquifer. So it's a designation set by central government that it's just something that we need to be aware of, and just making sure that any surface water discharge that we have from applications, make sure that they are treated, the water's treated, so we don't end up polluting our aquifers.
The last point, Mr. Chairman, if I may. The southeast side, when we went out to the site visit, was, I think, popularly referred to as the HGV toilet. There are some trees along there as well. Are those proposing to be kept? And if so, is that still going to become a HGV toilet?
The landscaping would be retained, except for the access. One of the accesses, vehicle accesses, would be proposed in that location. I can't comment on the HGV toilet situation. Unfortunately, I can't predict what happens there, but some of the landscaping is being retained around the access.
Councillor Jameson, you're in it.
Thank you, Chair. With all the other developments going on in the area, is there a proven need for more houses in Chilton or in this part of Sudbury?
Yes, one of the balances that we need to make is when we're making planning decisions is our land supply position, obviously, and we have a sufficient land supply in Babergh, 7.5 years, so obviously that comes into play in our recommendation. In terms of local housing need, that matter specifically isn't required on this site as it is with some sites in Babergh. So when we have sites on the edge of hinterland villages, our policy, CS11 in particular, requires us to demonstrate is there a local housing need. As this is on the edge of a market town, there's no requirement to actually demonstrate a local housing need, but the point stands that we do have a healthy land supply within the district, indicating that there's less weight placed on the benefit of housing coming forwards in this site.
Councillor McLaren, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Joe, thank you for that. As one of the applicants is a health organisation and a public health organisation, I think anybody reading the presentation would be wondering what the correlation was between the applicant and what is on the site. So I just want to clarify, is the relationship with the health centre or with the care home as far as the applicant's concerned? Thank you.
So one of the applicants is NHS Foundation Trust for, get the right term, West Suffolk. They own land behind the existing health centre. And that's why they feature in the application, as they're promoting their land there. So they don't own the land where the proposed care home is. That would be a separate operator, separate facility to them.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McCraw, you were...
Yes, thanks, Joe, for a very complex application. There's quite a lot of back and forth about the allocation of the land for this site as employment land as it's currently designated, and the arguments seem to flow with evidence being presented back and forth, as I say, about viability. As I understand, I just want to establish exactly what the policy position is on this, because reference is made to the emerging joint local plan, but of course we're basing this on the current employment allocation. Whether or not that lasts, when's the earliest that any potential change to the allocation for this land could be made? In other words, what are we actually looking at right now in terms of the land allocation?
Yes. So for the purpose of making a decision on this application today, we must look at the current development plan and any other material considerations. The current development plan is as I set out with all the slides, and material considerations can include emerging local plans, but it's the degree to the advanced stage they're at as to whether we can place significant weight on it. Now, we are in examination with our local plan, and there are a number of objections to different policies. And when there are objections, the NPPF makes it clear that we can't place weight on until they are resolved by an inspector's report, basically coming down on one side or the other of which one we should proceed with. So at present, we're advising that it's not the proposals in the joint local plan aren't determinative to determine this application today. We're basing it on the policies in our current development plan. That's where we're placing more weight.
The reason I ask this, if I might, Chair, is that, excuse my voice, is that, as I understand it, we can't get an actual final definitive allocation until the inspection process has been completed, likely in 2024, and we also can't determine what purpose that allocation will be made for. And on that basis, I'm just trying to work this out in my head, because there's a lot of stuff to cover in the papers. The whole question of the viability for different uses seems completely irrelevant, since we can't tell whether which use is likely to take place. Is that more or less the right reading of this situation?
Yes, so with the marketing campaign that the applicants need to demonstrate, we would ask for reasonable uses to be proposed and ask for those to be demonstrated, and the same with the viable form. So what we have done is modelled different employment uses to see whether they would come forwards, because you can't say definitively which employment use could come forwards, but there is a range of potential uses. So they've been modelled with our consultants who advised us on this matter further.
I think I've got that. Basically, I'm just trying to work out if in fact the entire question is rather moot as far as viability goes.
Any more questions? Councillor Busby.
Hi, Joe. Could you go to slide 42 again for us, please? So the church is where there? Is it that part there? So the problem I have with this is that we've designated that area as an employment zone. How would putting houses on that site be more damaging to the church than possibly employment? And how the hell did we allow those other employment units, those industrial units, plus that energy generation site so close to the church? I mean, it seems like we've got one rule for some things and a different interpretation for another.
Yes, the heritage harm the heritage harm needs to be considered. We have a duty under the planning application to consider the heritage harm now, and I think it is fair to say that recent case law over the summer, which was alluded to in the report, has clarified the level of harm, which when you're approaching substantial harm. So I think without commenting on the decision to allocate this land previously for employment, we can only make the assessment now based on current guidance, legislation guidance and case law. And our advice now is that the development proposals, as shown here, would lead to that level of harm. Ultimately, each proposal would need to be considered on its merits. If a proposal was coming forwards for employment, we wouldn't have the conflict with the development plan in terms of loss of employment. It would be a different planning balance. We'd still take heritage harm with the utmost importance, but it would be a different planning balance than we have in this instance here with the proposals for housing.
Okay, and in the same vein, if we're worried about nitrates filtering through to the aquifer from housing, why wouldn't we be concerned about them filtering through from an employment site? I would have thought there was more danger from that than there is from residential.
Again, when we come to the detailed design of any development, we would make sure that there isn't pollution. We would be able to ensure there are designs in any surface water disposal to capture pollution. So any proposal for either employment or housing would be able to address that point to an acceptable degree.
Sounds like we've got the designation of that site wrong and it probably should be left as parkland.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor Visby. Any more questions for the officer? No? Thank you very much, Joe. Right. We have confirmed that Councillor Maybury is staying speaking as a ward member. We'll now move on to the Parish Council representative, Christine Hagan. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm clerk to Chilton Parish Council, who object to this application, which is wholly in the parish of Chilton. This parish council strongly supports the conclusions of the officers' report and the recommendation of refusal of permission for the reasons set out therein. There's considerable opposition to this application, and we ask you to take account of the objections from Sudbury Town Council, Great Waldingfield Parish Council, 3 of your councillors. All of the statutory heritage and civil consultees object on grounds of harm to heritage. You have Mr. Lewis's review of the heritage evidence and his conclusions as to the considerable harm that will be caused by the development. Suffolk Wildlife Trust object on ecological grounds. 41 of the 42 public comments are objectors. The Parish Council's objections are set out in our previous letters, but in summary, they are that this site is allocated for employment use, not residential, contrary to policy EM24. The applicant has failed to show that the site is inherently unsuitable or not viable for employment use. There's a cluster of nationally important heritage assets within our parish. The considerable levels of harm to heritage that have been identified are not outweighed by the public benefits of this development. Further, there's no clear and convincing justification for this development. Your authority has a 5-year housing land supply of 6.86 years and a surplus of 786 units. This application fails to comply with policies CN06, CN14 and CS15. The application, without a justifiable need, proposes development in the countryside resulting in landscape harm as substantiated in the reports of Farmer and Elwood. Policy CS1 requires sustainable development, which this is not. The proposed development is contrary to your development plan and national planning policies. There are no material considerations that justify departure from those policies because the harm identified substantially and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Accordingly, national policies and law direct that permission should be refused. In addition to the points we've made previously, Chilton Parish Council ask you to resolve the recommendation of refusal of this application for the reasons set out therein. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Parish Council? No? Thank you very much. Moving on, we have 2 objectors Jan Osborne and Val Hart. You have 3 minutes between you, and I'll leave it up to you to time yourselves. Can I invite whoever's going first to start?
Morning, members. I normally like to show my approval to new housing, especially when there is an allocation of affordable housing. However, I strongly feel that this application needs to be refused as per the officer's recommendation. I will not waste my 1.5 minutes explaining policies as these are defined in the report. The recently revised Homes and Housing Strategy clearly states that the council must build the right homes in the right place at the right time, and this site is certainly not the right place. The old Prologue site is a strategic employment allocation which is located directly adjacent to the largest industrial area within Sudbury and offers excellent connectivity with existing businesses and has the relevant infrastructure in place. I understand that no robust marketing has been undertaken on this. Even if there had been no take-up to date, we need to retain employment sites such as this so that we have suitable land available as and when required. In respect to the land at the back of the health centre, when it was built, it was originally designed as a 3-storey building so that it could accommodate additional needs coming forward. However, planning was resubmitted for a 2-storey building on the understanding that the land at the back would be kept for future health provision as the town expands and the population grows. 2 good reasons for refusing this application, members, and many more referred to on page 79 in the officer's recommendation. Many thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. I object to this application for the reasons recorded. I support your officer's recommendation of refusal of permission. I live at Chilton Hall. I regard myself as a temporary custodian of 3 of these nationally important heritage assets for the future. They need your protection now from irreversible harm that this development will cause. You'll be aware of your legal duty, which the officers referred to under the listed building acts, to give special regard, that is great weight, to the desirability of preserving these assets. There's already substantial new housing being built in Chilton. For example, 1,280 units at Chilton Woods and Chilton Place. There's no clear or convincing justification for this development, and the public benefits do not outweigh the considerable harm to heritage that this will cause. Further, this development doesn't accord, as the officer has told you, with your development plan, nor does it accord with the NPPF policies. Therefore, permission should be refused. I ask you please to adopt the recommendation and refuse permission. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the objectors? No? In that case, thank you very much. Moving on. We do not have any supporters present, so I'll now ask the agent to speak. Jamie Dempster, I believe. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Good morning, Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Jamie Dempster, and I'm an Associate Director at Rock Planning, representing the applicant, who would firstly like to address the refusal recommendation, as it understood that all matters were resolved when no substantive noise issues were confirmed. This was the last known outstanding matter, stated by officers in February 2022, and followed much work since the original submission in March 2020, including substantial revisions in February 2021 to respond cooperatively to all officer requests. Moving, however, to the 2 reasons for refusal, we can discredit the position taken by officers citing breach of heritage and employment policy insofar that no comment has been received on heritage since the 4th of May 2021, when BDC's own heritage and design officer concluded that the level of impact of the indicative layout would result in a low to medium level of less than substantial harm. The fact that a critical report by Mr. Lewis was instructed in October 22 and completed in the same month undermines the integrity of this report, which in any event has been flawed by our own experts' response on the level of harm that the proposed scheme may have on the noted heritage assets, which was initially no harm. However, if a lower level of harm is accepted, the substantial public benefit clearly tips in favour of the proposals, and has been reinforced by a 100% affordable housing offer, which provides 36% affordable rent, with rents capped at below local LHA levels, and 64% shared ownership homes. In addition, a 60-bed care home, which will provide 55 full-time equivalent jobs.
You're not talking about the application for it.
Yeah, we're speaking about the 100% offer, which we put forward as an addendum.
The item as presented by the officer. Thank you.
In any event, in combination with the public open space, biodiversity and public realm enhancements which are provided alongside the 35% offer, these provide a package of significant public benefits which weigh, in our opinion, convincingly in favour of the proposals. In relation to employment policy, to ensure a robust approach, a leading local agent, Fen Wright, was instructed to advise on this. They provided overwhelming evidence in 2020 and 2021 that commercial development on the site was unviable, and this demonstrated that the evidence used by BDC's experts, DLP and RLB, was flawed, therefore demonstrating the non-viability of commercial development and compliance under Lim 2 of policy EM24. This is now only worsened by the economic realities of a projected deep recession by the Bank of England, rising interest rates, softening investment yields, and a lack of occupier confidence. In any event, the emerging local plan is seeking to deallocate employment use from this site, which is a material consideration. In summary, the proposal can provide affordable housing, with whom the commercial terms are agreed with Legal General, and they're here with us today if you wish to ask them any questions. We've demonstrated at the very least a low to medium level of less than substantial harm, against which the strength of public benefits weighs in favour of the proposals, and we've demonstrated a non-viability of commercial development on the site. As Jo explained in her presentation, the scheme is also supported for various technical reasons, such as highways, drainage, trees and landscaping. And
thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions for the agent? Councillor Busby.
You refer to the economic conditions making an employment site unviable. Doesn't it make a residential site unviable as well?
Sorry, my name's Guy Marsden. I'm the agent for the applicant. We have Legal and General here with us today, with whom terms are agreed for the development of the site for 100% affordable homes. In our opinion, the tenure of those homes is not a planning consideration, despite the comments which have been made by the case officer.
Thank you for your contribution, but yet again you're discussing a subject we're not discussing today. Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr Dempster. I'm trying to get my head around this care home sort of proposal. But looking in some of the papers, I think there's a debate whether it's that or something similar. Can you clarify, before I ask the second question, can you clarify for me that the care home is definitely part of this proposal?
Sorry, if I can answer that question as well, please. The care home was introduced following the public consultation that we had when a need for a care home was clearly identified. So despite the unattractiveness that from a commercial viability point of view, we provided a care home and we have a committed interest to acquire that site. And so in summary, we have a committed party to take forward the development of the care home and the residential component of the site. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I go on to my second question. I just needed clarification. So, care homes are well regulated, and they're usually well regulated before you even get to the actual planning stage. Can I ask if there's been any discussion with the Care Quality Commission around the siting of this care home? Thank you.
We are dealing with a very reputable care home operator who has got a substantive presence in the UK market. So although we haven't not had those dialogues directly with the regulators, they certainly would have done, because they've made us a hard offer for the opportunity on the site.
Can I just come back on that? Oh.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, okay. Yes, well, I think probably from my experience, the Care Quality Commission are an important element in anything that is planned around care, be that a nursing or a residential home. Thank you.
Any more questions for the agent? If not, thank you very much. I'm now going to invite the Suffolk County Council Division Member, Councillor Fairclough Mutton, to speak. You have 5 minutes to address the committee on matters relating to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appear before you all today as the division representative for Sudbury East and Waldingfield. The site of the application in the parish of Chilton falls within my said division. I wish to support the proposals for rejection by Chilton Parish Council, Great Waldingfield Parish Council and Sudbury Town Council, all of which are constituent parishes and town councils within my division, and for the reasons that they provide. Per the guidance of Claire Philpott to frame my recommended reasons for refusal, and these be on county issues. On the environmental front, the authority that I serve in March 2019 declared a climate emergency. The site is frequented by great crested newts, lizards and wild birds. This has been highlighted by the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, who in turn has recommended, on the basis of the National Planning Policy Framework of 2021, that this application be refused on that basis. As a local division representative, I understand the issues that have been faced on Churchfield Road by HGV parking. There have been no proposals in this application to address such issues. I can't imagine what an increased flow of residential parking would do to that road. I'm not a regular attendee of this committee. I do not take appearing before it lightly, hence this being my first in attendance as my tenure as a councillor. It is on that same strength of emphasis that I call upon you to accept the officer's recommendation for refusal today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the County Council? If not, thank you very much. Moving on, we now have the ward members. We have two. We have Councillor Arthey and Councillor Mabry. Which one of you is going to make a start? Councillor Arthey, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I wanted to thank Jo Hobbs for all of the work she's put into this application. An excellent report, I thought, and an excellent presentation as well this morning. And also thank her for her detailed responses to the questions that were asked of her. Furthermore, we've had well-presented representations from the Parish Council, from Councillor Osborne, Valerie Hart, and just now from Councillor Philip Mutton. I have to say that I'm in full agreement with the amended recommendations that you've got in your table papers this morning. Particularly draw your attention to little 1, that the application is contrary to our policies CS2 and EM24, and little 2, which addresses heritage concerns and identifies the proposals as being contrary to policies CN06, CN14 and CS15 and the NPPF. Also, just to remind you that the harm to heritage assets as Joe Hobbs explained, is identified as high, in some regards verging on substantial. And just remind you that substantial is as high as it gets, and is the description that would be attached to the total demolition of a listed building. One last thing to say, as a result of some of the discussion this morning, there was reference made to the gas-powered generator that was allowed near the church. Just to remind you that you actually refused that application. It was allowed on appeal, and the inspector had to exercise a judgment of balance in exactly the same way that you did at committee. But he identified that the need for that power generator outweighed the impact on the heritage asset, in that case the church. Here of course we've got Chilton Hall and its gardens as a heritage asset as well. So just to conclude, Chairman, I would very much encourage you to follow the recommendations in your paper, and once again thank you to Jo Hobbs for her report.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Councillor Maybury, are you ready to address us? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The committee will already have read my previous comments over the last 2 years on this planning application and noted my objections to it. Without reinventing the wheel, I add to it. I fully support the stance taken by Chilton Parish Council and Lady Heart of Chilton against the planning application, alongside Great Waldingfield and Sudbury, our county councillor and others. The site is designated economic development land and should be reserved for such as per its listing. I am currently engaged with a business that requires land for development but cannot find any around Sudbury, as the designated land is not being put forward for either sale or development for that specific purpose. It has also not been demonstrated by the applicants that marketing has been undertaken to achieve a commercial land sale, because I actually have a customer for some of it. Part of the land is NHS designated land, and in consideration of the vast development within both Chilton itself and the surrounding villages, we will require and we will need further medical facilities. This land should be protected as per the Naylor report, and I would like the Planning Committee to challenge any possible planning deviation from this restriction. I note comments about a care home being built on this site, and I will currently state that the care homes in and around Sudbury are not, as I have recent experience of them. The site is adjacent to the memorial lands of Chilton Hall. Chilton Hall is the last remaining manorial building from the surrounding area. I have stated before the loss of all manorial buildings at Great Waldingfield, Little Waldingfield, Acton and Sudbury itself. Our primary function should be to protect this manorial building with vigour, in consideration of Winston Churchill's quotation, which I précis and misquote: "We need to know where we come from to understand where we are going." How can we measure our district's success if we lose all our protected historical properties? What will we say to our future generations if we are the generation that has lost the last memorial property situation around Sudbury? I currently mourn the loss of all manorial buildings and land I have mentioned above. The site is currently a non-designated wildlife and recreation area for many. Leaving aside the merits of whether the public should enter the site, it nevertheless has become a recreation and relaxation area for the expanding population of Chilton, Sudbury and its surrounding areas. Perhaps the call should be for a compulsory purchase order for a designated and much needed recreation wildlife area for the benefit of the district. As Councillor Busby stated this morning, it should have been left as parkland. The cumulative impact of successive planning applications has and will have serious impact on all facilities within the Sudbury area. The committee should have due regard to these issues, as previously raised by me with planning officers way back as 2019 during parish liaison meetings in Lavenham, including the highway cumulative impact, The site at the old airfield the HGV site causes impactful issues with traffic, particularly when two are passing in opposite directions on the B115. Any further traffic from any further residential buildings will cause a huge bottleneck. It's already been commented about the unofficial HGV car park on the Churchfield Road, particularly with the lack of toilet facilities. This all adds up to comment further on the recommendation that the officer has for refusal. I urge my colleagues on the Planning Committee to support the officer's very good presentation that this should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Any questions for the ward members? No. Open the subject for debate. Who would like to kick off? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at this report, and it was quite a substantial report, and it took a lot of reading. Listening to the thing this morning, I mean, there's with no marketing strategy by the applicant for this site as an employment site, with it being outside the settlement boundary and already being designated as employment land by our policies, I can't see how we could approve this. Add into that the heritage issues and even if it's medium to less than substantial harm, it's quite a serious implications on the heritage assets. So I can't see personally how I could support any of the application we have in front of us. But also, as was mentioned by Councillor Maybury and Councillor Busby, I mean, should anything be on this? I mean, if this is refused with the heritage issues that are evident, I mean, employment is surely going to be refused as well. And as has been stated by both members, perhaps this should be left as parkland in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm very impressed with the length and number of reports that have had to be produced to go along with this application. I think we all probably spent quite a lot of time in the last 2 days, particularly in the updated last-minute papers, another 250, I note. I did go through them, and we have reports on behalf of Babergh District Council, which we wouldn't normally have, to discuss issues that had been raised by the applicant. And we've looked at employment, we've looked at the viability, we've looked at various different models to show that, in fact, yes, you could do this as employment land, as policy directs. We've looked at noise, acoustics, and notably from other representations we've had from the community on heritage assets. And there's just nothing that says that you should go against the officer recommendation here. It's an overwhelming range of evidence that backs up the officer's report. I think it's a shame that the officers had to go to all this trouble of getting all these reviews done, but we have independent external reports that back up our officers, and I think under those circumstances we can do no more than back the recommendation. So I should be clearly voting for any refusal on this application. I'm prepared to propose that we refuse the application as per the officer recommendation, including the amendments in the tabled papers we received yesterday. So that is points 1, 2, 3, 4 in bold, 5, and then part 2. So I would propose that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ayres, your second. Thank you. Is there any more comments? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have great concern about the siting of this care home in this application. We've heard that there's possibly not a need locally, but I'm a great believer in where care homes are sited is important, mostly for the patients or the residents that will be accommodated there. And this seems, they're bordering on an industrial site. If we think about healthcare being total and complete, there doesn't look much options for these residents to extend their activity or anything outside of that region. So for me, that is a big problem with this application, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I'm conflicted by this application on the basis that with its history, as I know, when the applicant was trying to build employment land or employment use on the site, that was turned down. And now we're in the situation, so it's gone to residential, and it looks like it's going to be turned down. You know, this is becoming a site that's being planned in blight, because I think we need to be careful. I mean, the heritage is causing a major issue. So obviously we can only look at what we've got in front of us. And on the basis of that, we are constrained by policy. Had the applicant had a marketing program for, is it 24 months? And that marketing program had been exhausted and there's no viable applicant came forward or use, I think we'd be in a situation where we would then be able to grant residential. But clearly that's not the case. So I'm not against residential. Unfortunately, I think we are constrained by the policies that we have in front of us. And we can't really go against those policies because they're very straightforward. But it does leave the site, again, in a position where it will be left empty for another God knows how many years. So reluctantly, I find myself going down the route of accepting the officer recommendation, but with the caveat that presumably if employment options come forward, then those employment options would have more public benefit to outweigh the less than substantial heritage harm. Now, I'm looking at Joe to see if that's something that where we would end up. But that's where we're in a difficult position here. And we obviously don't, you know, it's not possible with some of my colleagues who think it should go back to being it's actually never been parkland, it's been a field. So I think we need to be realistic about where we are with this.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Busby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I have to say that I resent receiving 250 pages of additional papers 24 hours or 2 days before a planning committee, especially since the majority of those papers have been around in existence for 2 years, 18 months, 12 months, are already on our existing website, and I would refuse to read them in future. I think any table papers should be new evidence, new information, not repeat of stuff that's already been circulated to us. I'm sorry, but my time is more valuable than to repeat reading of 250 pages. Having said that, I also find that heritage, we need to sort heritage out. How on earth can an inspector allow a gas power plant to be within yards of a Grade 1 listed church and say that's fine because, oh, well, there's some public benefit? Yeah, of course there is. And not allow housing 200 or 300 metres away. I mean, it just beggars belief, quite frankly. It implies, from according to, if we adopt the rules according to that inspector, providing the public benefit, there is a public benefit, it doesn't matter what it is, we can swamp the church. I mean, either it's a Grade 1 listed church that needs protecting, or it doesn't. I just think heritage is ridiculous, the way that we treat it, especially in this case. And I think we just need to sort that out, because it has such an impact on almost all of the applications that we receive, because we have a significant amount of heritage in this district. It's crazy that one week we throw something out because there's a grade 2 listed building within half a mile of it, and the next week we allow something built over the top of the church because there's so-called public benefit. I mean, I just don't understand that. In this case, I still think the officer's recommendations on balance are the right ones.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment? Right. Can we establish exactly what we're going to vote on? Mr. Stroud, can you help me?
Yes, Chair, it's in accordance with the amended recommendation in the table of papers. I believe that's what Councillor McCraw was proposing.
And you're happy with that as a seconder? Thank you. That is the proposal that's on the table. I will now ask the governance officer to take a vote. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 9 votes for refusal of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now take a break for 10 minutes. We'll be back here at 11 o'clock, please. Back, everyone. We are going to move to the third item on the agenda, 6C, DC 21069977, 182 Beerus Road, Great Cornard. Councillor Barrett, are you staying as one of the committee, or are you going to?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I may have missed something. What's happened to 6B?
We'll explain that in a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also add that the officer has to do some baby care, so we have to get her in quick. Thank you. I will now ask Elizabeth Flood to present the application to the committee. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. So this is reserved matters for 46 dwellings to the rear of 182A Bures Road in Great Cornard. The outline for this application included access, layout and scale, and therefore only appearance and landscaping are to be considered. So it's a bit different to the normal ones, where we look at more details at reserved matters. So this is at the site. This is Bures Road, with Sudbury Town Centre to the top. This is the railway line. And you can see the site here, and the dwelling at the front here is to be demolished. So the site is pretty clear. There's some buildings at the rear here as well that are to be demolished. Again, site location plan, so you can see the existing dwelling along Bures Road that will be demolished, and the two garages. There's also an electricity pylon across the site which will be undergrounded, and you can see the railway on the edge of the site here and the edge of the houses there. And this building here is the annex to 180 Bures Road. Again, it's outside the built-up area boundary, but the principle of development's already been approved under the outline, and it's on the edge but outside of the flood risk area. You can see that there on the boundary. So there are no constraints on this site. Site layout. The layout has previously been approved, and then there was a non-material amendment for some tweaks to the layout, but it's basically as was approved at outline. You can see the house is demolished and a new dwelling on Bures Road, and then the access road along here, the area of open space with the two retained trees and the suds. The affordable housing will be in this location at the back here. Again, this layout has already been approved, and then the dwellings will come off the spine road along here. Again, these are the proposed house types, so sort of the pink and red colours are the affordables, and then the others, you can see there's quite a mix of different house types within it. These are the street scenes, so this is at the top. So you can see these, it's sort of a mixture of Suffolk vernacular, design, various different designs. Again, this is looking along the spine road. You see various different designs. Again, these are the market dwellings. There's two bungalows here as part of the proposals. These are street scenes further up. So this is the block of affordable housing flats. So these are 6 one-bed and 3 two-bed dwellings. And again, these are some more of the affordable dwellings. So as you can see, they're of similar design to some of the market dwellings. Again, the type of housing in terms of the blocks and so on have already been approved. So it's just the appearance that we're considering today. Again, these are street scenes further into the site. And this is Bures Road. So this is existing. This is 182, which is to be demolished. and then this is the proposal. So this is the access as it is now, and then what will be replaced will be a dwelling here, slightly closer to the neighbour, but still with a gap, and then the access will come to the other side of the dwelling, along here. And you can see sort of pale are the dwellings at the back, the new houses, with the housing on Bures Road at the front. Again, these are the apartment block for the affordable housing. It's been designed so at the front it does look like sort of 3 separate dwellings. It is quite a bulky building, but we've done our best in terms of design to make it look as if it's different houses. Again, these are the flats. This is the flat over garage at the back. There's another affordable. This will be a 2-bed, sort of detached. Again, that's the elevations. Again, this is another of the affordables. This is these will be 4 2-beds, and that's the final affordable dwellings. These would be 2 3-beds. And then this is just some of the market dwellings. There are going to be 2 market flats. So these are the flats. There's a 1 2-bed and 1 1-bed. And then these are some of the larger dwellings. And again, they're all quite different, but all within sort of Suffolk vernacular. These are the bungalows, so the two bungalows that's been proposed. And this is an example of the play area. So there will be a small play area in this as part of the public open space. And what they're proposing is sort of natural wooden type play features. But it's proposed that the details of which will be conditioned. And this is the landscape plan. Sorry, it's not very easy to see, but the landscaping mainly will be the public open space area here, and then the trees on the boundary will be retained, and then there'll be some small trees added, but it's quite a dense site, so there isn't a space for a lot of additional landscaping. Again, phasing, so they're going to start with phase 1, 2, 3 and 4, so the affordables will be done in first phase. And these are the site plans, so that's the existing access between the 2 dwellings. That's 182A, which is to be demolished, and that's the neighbour. Again, you can see them a bit further away. This is the rear of 182A, so this will be where the access comes through. This is looking towards the railway. This is the site with the railway at the rear. Again, this is looking across the site. That's the annex at 180, so these are the 2 windows that we've looked to protect in terms of giving them some outlook. Again, this is looking across the site to the end. So you can see that most of the landscaping is on the boundaries. These are the buildings that will be demolished. Again, these are the trees that are to be retained as part of the open space, and that's the annex at 180, and that's it. And so the recommendation is as set out in your report to approve subject to the conditions proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Councillor Owen.
I was logging off there. I was looking at what the parish was saying in between what is stopping children running across the railway line.
We're proposing to... We're proposing to have a condition on boundary treatment so we can ensure that there is a significant fence along that boundary.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got 1 or 2 questions. The first, again, is about the play area. Is that going to be fenced off, please, from the entrance road? That's the first question.
Again, the details of the play area are to be agreed, but I think in this case we probably will ask for fencing, given that it is close to the access. Right.
Thank you. I would suggest that is necessary. Another question, because these properties are going to be fairly close to the railway line, and that railway line, although it's only classed as a branch line, is very well used, is there a plan for triple glazing in the windows?
Yes, it has been looked at by Environmental Protection, and they are comfortable that there will be sufficient acoustic with triple glazing.
Another question that I have is the flats that are basically on the extension of the flood plain, in consideration of the wet weather that we have at the moment. Thankfully, I am still safe from flooding, but I know other properties within the district now do have flooding. Are these flats going to be put on some sort of stilts or something so they're raised off the ground, please?
No, as far as I understand, they are outside the flood zone, and the layout has already been approved, so we're not considering where the position of those flats are. That was all previously approved at outline. We're just looking at the appearance of those flats. So we can't, the flood officer has no concerns about that site, where those are sited, but like I say, we can only look at appearance at this point, not the layout and where those are.
Sorry, in my book, appearance does take into account whether a house is put on stilts or not, but there we go. And lastly, you were talking about protecting the annex, the overlooking of that annex. How is that going to be achieved? Can you just confirm it, please? Thank you.
So, it's a bit difficult because they need to have outlook, but also have privacy. So what we have what we're proposing is the boundary treatment will ensure that there is no boundary treatment along where there are two windows. One's obscurely glazed because it's their bathroom, and one's not obscurely glazed. And what we're proposing is at the bottom of that window to have spiky plants so that the occupiers of the surrounding dwellings don't go too close to that window, but also ensure that there is no boundary treatment on that so they still get an outlook.
Thank you. I would recommend pyracantha, works wonders. Thank you.
Any more questions for the officer? Councillor Barrett.
Just to confirm, because I can't see it in the papers, but the original planning application was refused and went through on appeal, is that right?
I don't believe so. I think Mark can confirm because he was the case officer, but I believe it was approved. It wasn't appealed.
Outline permission was granted 2018. There may have been a previous case I'm not aware of, Chair, to be honest with you. We can check for that.
No, I'm not worried. It's just I seem to... There's quite a lot of history with this one, so... right, that's fine.
Any more questions? Councillor Busby.
Well, I think what we've been asked to look at is so minor in terms of the site that I'd propose that we accept the officer's recommendations. I don't think there's much else to discuss.
We're in question stage at the moment. If you'd like to come back to the proposal when we reach the debate stage. I have it. Are there any more questions for the officer? No? In that case, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Moving on, Councillor Busby, over to you.
Can we still ask questions? No, I'd like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations on this one. I think there's...
Carry on debating.
I was just going to say, I thought the house designs looked actually quite a nice mix. I don't know if anybody else felt that. Yeah, you know. And well, yeah, but actually... Yes, I just thought, no, I mean, for high density housing, it didn't look half bad.
Thank you for your opinion. Any more? If not, we have a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. Is that correct? Mark?
Yes, it is. I wasn't sure whether Councillor Maybury might have offered an extra condition. Did I understand that correctly or not, Councillor Maybury?
That would be nice, Mr. Russell. Thank you.
What was the condition that you spoke of?
I've turned the pages over. Sorry. I'll switch that on. Yes, my condition would be that the play area is fenced off, and also that we've agreed to there should be triple glazing, acoustic glazing, but I think that's already been agreed. And the last is that pyrocanthus are planted to protect the annex because they are evergreen, have lovely berries, and would be very nice.
Okay.
I think both of those are already covered in kind. There's Elizabeth, there's a planting condition, isn't there, for the last point there? Or is there a special condition for the privacy of? Is it already covered by a condition?
At the moment, we're saying PD remove for fences, walls and hedges along the boundary with 182 Bures Road to stop anyone putting a fence up. We're also requiring details of boundary treatment and details of the children's play equipment. That usually includes boundary treatment, but we can say including fencing. The landscaping plan already shows those spiky plants, but I don't know what the species is. So we could ask for additional details of landscaping.
So if I may, Chair, we could, as an advisory, officers to ensure that the spiky planting is clarified. I don't know if we can be as prescriptive as saying the exact species you mentioned, Councillor, but yeah.
I thought you'd be that specific.
Yeah. That's as advice to us. And the other point is to advise that the play equipment has fencing around it. Is that already covered, did you say?
That was already covered, wasn't it?
At the moment, we've got a condition to ask for details of the play equipment, so we could expand that to include
to ensure
fencing.
that there's a reference to fencing in that.
Well, I'm not certain it needs to be totally encircled with fencing. I just think there needs to be a fence between the play equipment and the road. I mean, it's a small development. I don't think they should have
between play equipment and the road, right?
As proposer and seconder, do you accept that amendment? You don't have to. Yes, you do. Thank you. So that's part and parcel of the proposal. Are there any more comments? If not, I'll ask the governance officer to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. You'll need to scroll down to the bottom vote on the agenda. Councillor Osborne, have you managed to log in, or would you like me to take yours? You've done it. Yeah, thank you. I see now. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 11 votes for. That's carried.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. We'll move straight into the next one, which is 6B. This is land DC 2102-405, land east of Artists Close and Rotherham Road, Bildeston. We don't have the ward member here, but I will invite Daniel Cameron, to make a statement to the committee first, and then we can decide where we're going next. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. So we received emails last night from the owner of the site indicating they've sold their interest in the site to Orbit Homes. Orbit Homes have changed agents for the site to their own preferred agent and have asked that this item be withdrawn from consideration to allow them to make their own improvements to the scheme and to make changes to the house types so that they're their preferred house types, and we would then effectively postpone this decision and bring the scheme back to committee following consultation on new drawings, engagement with the parish council, and then come back to you with an improved scheme. So the first question to members is, on that basis, are you content to see this withdrawn from the agenda such that we engage with Orbit and their agents and then bring this back in a more fit state for your consideration at the appropriate time?
Thank you, Daniel. Comments from anyone? Or do you want to just...
Basically, I think bearing in mind the information that we just received, I think we made to make a recommendation that the application is withdrawn, and the applicant has an option to bring it back to the committee when they are sufficiently revised.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Hinton.
Question as well. I did have a question as well, and that is Orbit's a registered social landlord. Only 17 of the 48 are affordable houses. Does this mean they're getting into the sort of development business as well as affordable housing? Or are they going to come back and say we want to do it all affordable?
They might well do that. So at present,
it's completely different to the planning that's been granted.
So it's only as of last night that they owned the site. So the site had been brought forward with the original owner and agent. 35% was to be delivered as agreed as part of the outline and secured by the Section 106 on the site. Orbit have since taken ownership. They may wish to revise the tenancy and the arrangement in terms of affordable housing. They might take it up, they might leave it as it is, but at the moment we don't know what their intentions are. We only know that they now own the site and would like to make improvements.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important then that it does come back to the committee because it could be that we've got to start from square one again.
It could well be, yes, but we'll give the applicant the opportunity to do that. So I have a proposal from Councillor Barrett to accept the officer's recommendation. Councillor Maybury.
Yes, I would like to second it, that we do withdraw it. Thank you.
You might have waited till I'd finished. I was about to say, yes, Councillor McCraw, you can.
Just that I noticed this is dated originally from 2015, so it's a long while it's been going on, and the expiry date is listed as the 28th of January this year. That's this year, not next year. So, and it would seem, is it likely we're going to get a new outline application as opposed to just a new set of reserved matters? Do we have any indication?
Well, if members wanted to consider the application before us, we could grant the reserved matters, and then Orbit would be left with an option of either coming forward with a fresh application or submitting a Section 73. In either case, both would come back to members for
don't think anybody wants that.
Their consideration. Yes, the original outline is quite old. There was a significant delay in agreeing the Section 106 to attach to that outline. So I think the original decision was only issued in 2017. That then rolled on, and during the coronavirus pandemic, government made changes to the manner in which reserved matters can come forward to give additional time to developers to bring them forward. So it managed to squeak in under that provision, and then effectively this has been kept going, trying to get amendment and revision. As one of the first things Orbit have done is said that they're happy to extend the scheme to allow their revision to come in, consultation to happen, and then for us to come back and present this to members in their preferred format.
It sounds as though it's going to take consultation, whatever, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the Governor's Officer to conduct a vote. I'll first of all ask you to please read out what you've just typed in that box as being the motion.
Thank you, Chair. So the vote reads that application number DC 21-02405 be withdrawn from the agenda to enable officers and the applicant to obtain further information, and the application to return to committee at a later date. If everybody's happy with that, I will...
Yep, open up the vote.
Thank you. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 11 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. The next meeting is penciled in for the 14th of December, but I've had no indication yet of how many there might be there.
It's likely just to be the Chilton Heat Hub application. More Chilton for you.
Okay. Heat Hub. Heat Hub.
Just don't ask. Yeah, it's Jasmine Wise, the case officer, so she'll take it.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So that's the possible one coming to us on the 14th. Okay, thank you very much.